He knocked on my door at midnight and asked for one last meeting like my whole life was a boardroom he could book after hours. I had the lights half off, the chairs flipped, the espresso machine already scrubbed, and this man in a slate suit held up a business card like a white flag. "If it were you, what would you have done?" I'm Lena Park, owner of a small neighborhood bakery cafe called Lantern and Loaf, the kind of place that smells like cinnamon by 6 a.m., where the corkboard is packed with soccer schedules and choir flyers, and the regulars don't need a loyalty app because I know their names. That night, the clock over the door thunked 12, the street went quiet, and he stood under the lamplight with the look of someone who'd been awake for a year. I cracked the door with the chain still on because I was tired, not reckless. "We're closed," I said. He nodded, lifted the card to the glass, and I saw the name. Ethan Cole Dynamics, the company in the spaceship building by the river. "I'm not here for coffee," he said, voice low and steady breath fogging the glass. "Just 5 minutes of your time. One last meeting, I promise." I should have said no. Midnight knocks rarely bring good news. But something in the way he stood, hands visible, suit immaculate, yet shoulders frayed at the edges, made me curious against my better judgment. I slid the chain, let him into the warm pool of light by the pastry case, and pointed to the two-top by the window. No latte. No fuss. 5 minutes. He took in the chalkboard, where my mom's handwriting, still ghosts under the daily special, the faded Polaroid of Mrs. Alvarez laughing so hard on her 70th that the picture blurred the nicked table legs, the handmade sugar jar with a crack we pretend is a feature. "My board congratulated me this morning," he said, loosening his tie by 1 polite inch, record quarter headlines, the whole thing. Tonight I drove around until this light told me to stop. I raised an eyebrow. "And you want me to clap for you at midnight?" He smiled, the tired kind that says I used to be funny back when sleep was a thing, and shook his head. "I want to talk to someone who doesn't want anything from me." I told him the truth about this room. How my parents launched Lantern and Loaf with a second-hand oven, how the oven smoked on day 1 because I misread a cinnamon note, how a teenager named Jordan does homework at the big table because it's the only place he can focus without feeling watched, how a widow sat here the morning after her husband's funeral because she couldn't bring herself to go home to the silence. "This place isn't cute," I said, "it's oxygen." He listened without trying to fix me with buzzwords. Then he said the sentence that changed my month, maybe my life. "I want to partner with someone who can guard the soul and scale the service. Help me build rooms like this in neighborhoods that need them. Your way with your veto, with community first. You ever feel your heartbeat change lanes?" Yeah, that happened. I looked at him, at the suit, the coat, the soft hands of someone who has people, and I said what I say when men with money find their conscience at midnight. We start small. 2 locations, not 10. Town halls before leases. Local hires at living wages. Community benefit clauses in the lease in ink, not as a press release. And I keep a real brake cord. If we drift from the mission, I pull it and we stop. He didn't flinch. "Yes to all of it," he said. "No theater. No negotiation dance. Just yes." I didn't sleep that night. Tea went cold on the counter while I made 2 lists, fear versus purpose. I called my best friend Priya at 6 a.m. because she works in social services and knows what rooms like mine mean when the rest of the city turns sharp. She came over, sat on my kitchen floor, and said, "Test him, don't swoon, put your people in the loop." So I did. I asked Mrs. Alvarez what she thought about expansion, and she squinted at me over her tea, saying, "Don't forget us if you get famous." I asked Jordan, and he lit up. If there was a place like this near my cousin, He wouldn't have to sit in a library where the guard hates him. The book club argued like a Senate hearing, then told me I've never once made a decision without the neighborhood at the center, so do it the way I do everything, painstaking and stubborn. I called Ethan at noon. Terms, I said. Tomorrow, he answered. We met at my place because I don't do rooms where air smells expensive unless I have to. He came in jeans, which I side-eyed because sometimes rich men put on denim to cosplay approachable. But he slid a legal pad across the table and wrote a title in block letters, Common Table Initiative, then handed me the pen. You're the author, he said. I'm the publisher. We wrote a covenant that could hold a storm. Mission lock, living wage floor, zip code hiring preference, local vendors first, free space for community groups during prime hours because community isn't a leftover, 3 town halls before a single sign goes up, and my veto carved in stone. Pattern interrupt. I'm going to tell you about a villain, but not the cartoon kind. Her name is Victoria Hale, CFO and COO of Coal Dynamics. Tailored navy suit hair, perfect vocabulary, sharp enough to file a patent. We took a meeting at their spaceship because that's where you take meetings when your partner runs a public company. She didn't sit before launching the opening volley. Ms. Park, your covenant is passionate but economically incoherent. She slid me a spreadsheet like a chess piece. You want to hire above market here, favor suppliers who can't hit volume, they offer free space in profitable day parts, and hold veto power over investor consent. You are building friction into a model that wins by eliminating it. I slid my own P, Sasan and L back to her. Dog-eared coffee stained real, and said, Lantern and Loaf has been profitable 8 years running. We aren't a charity. We're a stubbornly useful room. People pay for that. And there are lines you don't cut just because a chart tells you to. She smiled with her eyes closed. I don't do poetry, Ms. Park. I do P-P-S and L. Great, I said, then you'll love measuring chairs pulled up per hour and laughter per shift. She didn't laugh. She looked at Ethan. Is she your partner or your liability? He cleared his throat, said, Pilot moves forward. 2 locations. Covenant stands. She nodded a general allowing a skirmish and murmured, We will revisit in Q2. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. We hosted town halls in Riverton East and South Point Terrace, school cafeterias with bad acoustics and excellent truth. We put the mic on the table and sat down. A barber named Dwayne told us chains analyze corners like battlegrounds, and then talk about activation like people are NPCs. Miss K, a science teacher, said we'd better open at 6 a.m. for the early bus crowd, or we weren't for the neighborhood at all. A grandmother in a flawless church hat stood up and said, I don't want a brand. I want a room where I don't feel in the way. We took notes, then put 3 residents from each neighborhood on a steering committee with real votes. I got called naive on a blog that covers local politics like it's sports. Priya took my phone away and made me watch penguin documentaries when the comments got mean. We picked our first space, a closed bookstore with big windows and a floor that remembered stories, and Ethan negotiated the lease like a chess player who sees 5 moves ahead. When I circled a sneaky rent reset clause, he killed it on the spot and added a community use clause that Marcus, my landlord, would call witchcraft. We built with neighbors. Saturdays, the place was ladders and paint rollers and a playlist that kept blowing the speaker. Tash painted a sunrise wall with a color you can't buy. She named it Good Morning Friend, and we all agreed to act like it had always been there. Ethan showed up in boots with actual mud hung pendant lights from a beam we didn't know we loved until it warmed the whole room. Someone's uncle announced he used to do electrical, and we gently redirected him to sandwich duty because I enjoy unburned buildings. We almost kissed once, standing too close near the espresso bar, debating a 30-degree angle versus straight on because flow matters more than people think. He looked at me like a person he could choose on purpose, then he stepped back and said, "Angle it. You pivot left." We got back to work. Opening day. I put the chalkboard outside and immediately got scared. What if nobody comes? Then the door started swinging. Miss K beat the sun by 10 minutes. Jordan brought 2 friends and claimed the corner table. The grandmother with the church hat ordered tea and smiled like we'd built a porch around her memories. Dwayne parked 4 barbers in the window, and they argued about basketball so loudly we didn't need a radio. Ethan moved like a host, not a figurehead, fixing the receipt printer mid-rush without announcing it. And for a whole hour, my shoulders forgot to live near my ears. And then, the twist. A letter from Victoria's office, crisp and surgical, asking for pilot metrics and preliminary adjustments to align with corporate governance goals. Translation: cut staff during non-peak, lower the wage floor to median, end free community space after 6 p.m. And, on page 7, in an attachment I definitely never signed, replace my veto with consultative input. Tiny words, massive knife. If you've ever been underestimated, you know the exact temperature that crawls up your spine when someone tries to edit your dignity. I walked into the spaceship without an appointment, because when you paint a wall with your neighbors, you don't ask permission to defend it. The lobby smelled like filtered water and money. The conference room had the kind of view that makes a river look well-behaved. Victoria greeted me with an expression I'd file under patient knives. "Language is mutable when risk changes," she said, gesturing at the amended clause. "No," I said, "language is a promise." I told her calmly, because calm is scarier, that per Section 4 mission lock, if they kept the amendment, I would pull the brake cord today, lock the doors, put up a sign that said "closed for principle," and go read the covenant on air with the reporter who loves human stories. "Is this your partner," she asked Ethan, "or your liability?" He looked at the paper, then at me, and I will admit, for one long second, that felt like a year, I wasn't sure which way he'd go. He has spent his adult life in rooms where compromise is oxygen. People do surprising things when their title pays their mortgage. He chose. "Restore the veto," he said, voice anchored. "Delete the wage changes. We're not going to tell the city we care and then rewrite caring into conditions." She stared, calculating a dozen consequences. "Shareholders won't clap," she said. "They'll clap for the quarter," he answered. "They can survive one principled sentence." The amendment died. My brake cord stayed in my hands. We went back to work, back to something to one. You want the love story, you earned it. We kept work first, told our teams, before Instagram made rules, so we wouldn't trip over ourselves. He brought flowers once, and I vetoed them, so he started bringing flowers to the staff, and I couldn't argue with a room full of roses in flower bins. He learned my coffee order, which is not romantic. It's life-saving. I learned he wanted to be an architect at 14, because he believed rooms can teach people how to be together. We kissed late one Tuesday, after close lights. Low lists checked, not cinematic, just right. And yes, some people cheered, some asked fair questions. Is it okay for a CEO to date a woman whose project his company funds? How do you keep power from tilting a room? When does partnership become pressure? If it were you, what would you say? Months later, 3 rooms open, 2 more in the pipeline. Letters pinned on the walls from people who call these places their third place now. Ethan stepped away from a division, moved into an apartment a block away because he wanted to wake to the smell of my mother's recipe card. He proposed not in front of a skyline, but in my shop after close on a Tuesday again, with hands that actually shook with a ring that looked like my grandmother's, because he found a jeweler who could listen. "Will you be my partner in everything?" he asked. "And when you need the brake cord, I'll pull with you." I said yes, because true things deserve a yes. Pattern interrupt. Not everyone clapped. A follow-up feature ran with our story, and the comments got lively. "This is philanthro branding. He'll get bored. She's charming, but the math will break. This is gentrification with frosting. Dating your funder is a red flag." I don't think those are troll questions, not all of them. Our city has been promised into exhaustion before. That's why we wrote the covenant like a spine. That's why our steering committees vote on real things, why we post wages on the wall, why Miss K gets her coffee at 6 a.m. Because bus drivers exist, why the grandma in the church hat never feels rushed for her table. Then came the last test, and I promise it's the kind that splits a room. Victoria brought me a sheet that showed how we could make the quarter sing. Trim, one staffer during non-peak hours raise prices by a quarter stop, reserving free space for community groups after 6 p.m. Invisible math, she called it. No one will notice. Everyone will notice, I said. Rooms have memories. They know when you traded a chair for a chart. She looked genuinely puzzled for the first time. "Do you want a business or a shrine?" "Both," I said, because a shrine where people eat is called a neighborhood. We didn't implement her plan. We stayed brittle and alive. Risky, sure. Real, absolutely. Do you think that's fair? Here's where I land. I didn't trade my why for someone else's how. If we must scale, we scale the heart first. When someone tried to move a comma that mattered, we read the whole sentence out loud. When a spreadsheet demanded a person, we put a name back on the line. When a midnight knock looked like a headline and a problem, I opened the door a crack and let life ask me a big question. So now I'm asking you one. Did we get this right? Is it possible to mix love and work without corrupting both, to let a company fund a mission, without buying its soul, to keep a neighborhood alive, without smoothing it into a brand? When a woman like me asks for veto power, is that being difficult, or finally being precise about what it costs to hold a room for people the market forgets? And if you had been standing at that door at midnight, chain latched a stranger in a suit asking for 5 minutes, what would you have done? If this hit you in the gut, or made you mad, or made you hopeful, tell me why. Drop a comment about the room that saved you, the promise someone kept, or broke the neighborhood that taught you how to be a neighbor. Hit subscribe if you want more real stories. Told like this, share it with someone who needs the courage to pull their own brake cord, and argue with me in the comments. Respectfully, loudly, like a town hall with good coffee. Your turn.